What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another edition of the Daily Energy News Beat Stand-Up here on this gorgeous Monday, January 9th, 2023. As always, I'm your humble correspondent, Michael Tanner, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Dallas, Texas, joined by the executive producer of the show, the purveyor of the show, and the director and publisher of the world's greatest website, EnergyNewsBeat.com, Stuart Turley. My man, how we doing today?
It's a beautiful day up here in Bear Country, or in the neighborhood, as you say. But anyway, we're going to have the Dallas Cowboys play a playoff game today. So I'm going to be riding a bicycle while I listen to that.
Yeah, it's next week, but good, nice try, though. It's next week.
Well,
Today's the last week of the NFL season.
Oh, well, they're playing today. And
they are playing today. So, yes, if you happen to be a Cowboys fan, which I'm sorry if you are, but you'll get that playoff game next week. I do. There's something where they're playing the Eagles today, or there's a battle maybe for first place, but it's definitely not the NFL playoffs. But that's okay. Did you have a good weekend otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. Got a lot of work done. Life's good.
Good. Well, we have an absolutely tremendous show for you guys lined up. Stu has some doozies of a story picked out. We've got two IR early RI candidates of the week. First, it's somebody out of Andronid, which is a hedge fund which focuses on commodities. They say that oil prices could exceed $140 if China economy fully reopens. Is that really possible? And we will get Stu and I's reaction next. Stu has lined up for us. India just became the world's largest the world's third largest automobile market. What does that mean for their EV consumption? Stu will cover that. If you've been following it all, congressional politics over the past week, you've obviously seen that there's been a huge battle for the U.S. Speaker of the House. Finally, it settled on Kevin McCarthy. Stu's got lined up. Kevin McCarthy becomes the U.S. House Speaker, but with diminished power. What does that mean for energy policies? The next story that we'll cover is aptly titled "The Media Blackout Over the Terror Incident at the Vegas Power Plant, a Trend to Keep Consumers in the Dark." The darkest type of humor that Stu's got, because that's an analogy that's a little scary. I had no idea that there was a terror attack on the Vegas Power Plant, so Stu will cover what that means, and as he mentioned, that terrifying trend. I've only got a couple things in covering just what's happening with the crude oil markets. Obviously, not much has happened this weekend. We do have a very interesting story out of Oxy and the Houston Texans for all you football fans. So that's about all as I will cover. Natural gas down to 370. We'll cover what that means for the overall markets and everything, and a bag of chips, guys. But first, check us out online at the world's greatest website, EnergyNewsBeat.com. The best way to stay up to date with all of your energy news. All of the articles that we mentioned are available via the website. Also, check out dashboard.energynewsbeat.com. It is our one-stop shop for all data and news, courtesy of the world's greatest website. So we appreciate everybody who's looked at it so far, giving us feedback. Continue to hit it, dashboard.energynewsbeat.com. But enough of the pleasantries, Stu. Where do you want to begin today's show?
Well, I think we need to start, Michael, with our joke IR of the week. And I think, if you don't mind, give us just a real quick explanation of what IR guy of the week. You and I have been laughing about it for years, but give us an explanation.
So back at the old Empire, we had this thing where we would basically, anytime we read a story and there was just an outrageous quote or some sort of obvious spin or some sort of just completely nonsensical item, we would nominate them as IR guy of the week, investor relations guy of the week. Because trust me, if anyone from any oil company, gas company, wind company, renewables company, anything crazy that gets said, it's usually the IR guy, because he's trying to pump. They're all trying to pump. So IR guy of the week for us is just anybody that says something outrageous that is trying to pump up something.
Hang on, I'm checking to see if President Biden was ever an IR guy. If he was an investor,
I'm sure they're all IR guys too. They are all. No, it's the press secretaries. It's their press secretaries.
Press secretaries. Okay. All right. First article coming around the corner. Oil prices could exceed $140 if China's economy fully reopens. Is this really a possibility? And what do you think? Let me come around here. And I just want to say that this article has some really good points, but the calculations that he's coming in here puts him into IR guy of the week And if we're going to watch this, he may be in running, Michael, for IR guy of the quarter. So as we take a look at this, the crude prices could exceed $140 a year is what he says if China fully reopens, and hedge fund manager PR Andred said on Friday. He sees the possibility of demand growing by 4 million barrels per day on this year. It's a 4% increase over last year. This far exceeds the growth set by 2023. Here's where he's got a caveat, Michael. And the last line in here, I got really tickled. Iran did say that oil demand will be limited by a growth in the EV sector, as EVs have the potential of displacing 600,000 barrels per day of demand.
Yikes. Yikes.
What are your thoughts?
I don't buy any of this analysis. I mean, $140 crude oil?
Nope.
Good luck, man. Good luck. You think a 4% increase in oil demand is going to cause almost a doubling, a 50% increase in the spot price?
No. Now
it just doesn't pass the sniff test.
No, this is really
my dad used to always say, when you get an answer, sniff it a little bit. Does it make sense? And if it doesn't make sense, you're probably right. This smells funky.
Oh yeah, well, I had a shower, so it ain't me. But now if you take a look at this, I like his thought process, but I cannot see $140 per barrel at all unless there's a couple things. And it wouldn't only be until the second half, and it would be a spike. So you sit here and say 140, yeah, it might be a spike, but we also spiked to zero before. So you really can't call that. I'm not calling it an average.
I mean, if he's buying crude oil options, okay, maybe I see you. That's your target price. And then you're buying crude oil. But if you're talking about, and this is where we just get a soundbite from him. We don't get his full thesis. And you're welcome to call the podcast, my man. We'll talk about $140 oil. I'd love to.
I'll shoot him an invite.
We'll slice and dice that model. Trust me.
Absolutely.
So, and that's where it's just, is if it's one time, okay, sure. Maybe you're gambling on a nuke. I don't want to gamble on a nuke, but maybe that's what you've got. So very interesting, but I don't buy any of this. I'm not sure if this is IR guy of the week, though. I still think our Houston Texans story will win.
All right. He may be runner up.
It's all right. Not everyone can win. Not everyone can win every week.
All right. Yeah, but being second at the dance is not all that bad. Let's go to the next one, which is kind of a follow on to the EVs. India just became the world's third largest automobile market. What about EVs? I'll tell you what, this is absolutely a hoot of a story from the standpoint. Again, you know how I feel about the Indian leadership trying to get the low cost power to everybody in India. And they're going to become the most populous country in the world. So when you take a look at EVs, and you take a look at trying to control carbon, they're not going to be able to do it while getting low cost power. One of the last lines in here, most vehicles sold in the country were gas based, which includes some hybrid models, while EVs are not driving sales in China and the US. China and the US are leading those, and Norway. Norway is really leading the world in a percentage per capita. So if you take a look, as they have yet to be adopted in any meaningful fashion in India, the report says, Michael, it's because of their infrastructure. They don't have the money, and they're doing the best they can in order to get power to the people. So, I really think that why is not, and I want to ask you, why is nobody asking about hybrids? You've driven a hybrid before, and they have great gas mileage. They're pretty spiffy. How come we're not spending more time on the hybrids?
Well, because when you get down to it, in my opinion, the switch to EVs has nothing to do with climate, has everything to do with they don't feel like they control the oil and gas business. Maybe they feel like they can control the EV business. Powers that be have more vested interest in trying to get off oil and gas, not because of climate, but because they maybe can control it a little There's obviously some of that into it. I
That
think,
makes sense.
and I think that they've sold this hardline approach where it has to be all renewables, which means hybrid, you use gas. And if your goal is to wean off gas, then it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense to push hybrids, even though, as you mentioned, I love hybrids. I think hybrids are probably the way to go. In terms of if you want to maximize fuel efficiency, you could probably go completely hybrid and probably lower the amount of gasoline demand tremendously if we rolled out hybrids, which would be a great thing to ease, because that's where we're not undersupplied in crude oil. We're undersupplied in the amount of refined products we have.
Exactly.
So hybrids actually, Stu's been talking about the refined products crunch for years now. That's where hybrids really come into play.
And I think it would also, Michael, really the hybrids make a big difference in using less battery technology. We'd save children more. We'd use less of that. There's a lot better chance if we focused on hybrids. And, I'd rather get 50 miles per gallon, double the amount of miles per gallon than not be able to go in the winter. It just makes sense to me, dude. So anyway, hats off to the Indian folks, and I'd love to see some more hybrid. Hey, real question. Didn't you have a hybrid last year?
No, I've driven 2 cars in my life. I drove from age 16 to age 24, 25. I drove a Volkswagen Passat, all-wheel drive. Decent car. The issue is you can't get Volkswagens worked on in the States. So that thing, by the time I got done with it, it was held together with duct tape and JB Weld, because no car company, no shop would work on it. So me and my dad just had to do all the work ourselves. Now from, age 24 till now, I just got a 2007 F-150, like the short cab where you got like the little half door in the back that up.
That's where you eat your knees when you're in the back, but it is a truck. You're in Texas, got to have a truck.
I owned that truck before I got to Texas, and it's a actual truck with 4-wheel drive. None of this Texas edition truck where it's only 2-wheel drive. I got buddies who got trucks, but it's the Texas edition, which means it's only rear-wheel drive. It's horrendous.
Right. For our listeners out there, Michael Tanner still has his Colorado driver's license, so he ain't a Texas.
And plates, of course.
Okay. The next one coming around the corner, media blackout over terror incident at Vegas power plant. Michael, just like you said, you didn't hear it. A trend to keep consumers in the dark. This one kind of frightened me a little bit. And let's go through some of these. Mohammed Messerman at 34 rammed his car through the gate of a solar powered generation plant outside Las Vegas. Set his car on fire, intending to damage a massive transformer. Thousands were without power, and just unbelievable. It was a Toyota Camry. He said he burned the vehicle at a Tesla solar plant and did it for the future. Wow. Okay. The reason I'm a little concerned is, how come it wasn't covered in the news? Do you think that we're trying not to? There's a list in here also of other ones that were very not covered in the news. So when we talk about this terrorism, the grid is very, very vulnerable, but it's not only vulnerable to physical. Our security on our 3 grid systems is not so good on the cyber attack. Michael, do you remember when we had the pipeline incident where they cut out? Was it the Colonial Pipeline last year?
Who was it? Not Duke Energy, Dominion Energy, I think it was. Who was the company in charge of it? I'm sorry if it's not Dominion, but I'm pretty sure you're right. It was the Colonial Pipeline by Dominion. Oh yeah, brutal. I mean, this is a little different. Dude rammed his car into a facility. Little different versus like a coordinated attack from like Al Qaeda or Russia or some other group. But you bring up an interesting point. This isn't the first time we haven't heard about things like this. And and you could argue there are good reasons for that. There's no need to freak people out. But at the same time, if we're not constantly then doing things in the background to make our infrastructure more resilient, specifically
Exactly.
our digital infrastructure, then we're just idiots. We're making people live in this world of naivety. And, sometimes,
Well,
ignorance is bliss, Stu. I've always said that.
well, now's not the time to put your head in
And
the
you
sand.
break that wall. I try to just live in happy land, and you just come in with an axe and just chop that wall down and be like, look, scary.
Well, I've done my best to do imitation of Jack as he's rolling through the wall. I'm back. Okay, now, this could be like all the food plants that are, combusting all the time, and you're not seeing those in the news. All right, now let's go to our next story. McCarthy becomes the U.S. Speaker, but with diminished power. What does that happen to mean to energy policies? Michael, I have mixed emotions about all of this. I got really tickled at this whole 15 votes or whatever it was. And Matt Gaetz stood up and voted Trump in, made his vote for Trump. That was absolutely a hoot. No, there's no way Trump would ever be in there. And I don't know that he would be the best bull in the china closet. But I do like what the 20 were trying to do. And the 20 of them were trying to put, there's nothing more than they were trying to put rules back into Congress that Nancy Pelosi stripped out 10 years ago that helped them drive the budgets nuts. So that's not being talked about. But what do you think this is going to do to energy?
I don't think it's going to have much to do about anything. If anything, we're just back in gridlock. And, I don't think gridlock is a bad thing, but, the current state of the energy policy is a little bit murky. So obviously we're not going to get any clarifications anytime soon. If anything, this just shows that within the Republican Party, things are extremely fractured, and it's going to be, we can't agree on a Speaker of House. How are they going to agree on a president in 4 years or in 2 years? And then we're going to get stuck with Biden again, which
the Ross Perot
effect. It's just, I think it shows that we're in trouble.
Yes. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up as it pertains to energy, and this is something that we need to watch. And as we pertain to energy, I think this is going to drive Biden and his energy policies to do 2 or even 3 times the amount of legislation through regulations that is just going to be horrific to the energy market. I'm not talking oil and gas. I'm talking the entire energy market. So, I want to visit with anybody about their thoughts. Ask us questions at energynewsbeat.com. Again, that's questions at energynewsbeat.com. I have my podcast. I'd love to have anybody come on that is an industry expert and tell us what their thoughts are on this kind of one. So, Michael, I'm all done and ready to kick it back to you for finance now. That was actually a pretty insightful, thoughtful article.
Yeah, for once.
Hey, I had my moment.
Well, no, we appreciate it, Stu. Again, all of those stories via the world's greatest website, energynewsbeat.com. I mean, nothing has happened as we recorded this actually Sunday about 12:30. So markets are closed right now. Oil sits at $73. Natural gas sits at $3.76. We saw some pretty crazy EIA numbers this week. Again, just to review, we saw a 1.7 million barrel increase in the amount of crude oil storage. We saw that on Thursday and then fall. And then right after that, we saw a 213 BCF draw from our natural gas storage, which didn't do much to prices. Again, the thing on natural gas is these weather models. I love this. I always go back to Nat Gas Intel. Nat Gas, here's their quote from their Friday release, Stu. Nat Gas Weather said the outlook is tenacious for prices. Wow. Excuse me, tenuous. The firm said Friday that both American and European weather models, which had already pointed to the warmest January in more than a decade, trended even more bearish in terms of degree day totals heading into the final trading session of the week. The national heating degree days for the 15-day projected period were down more than 110 compared to historic norms, equating to nearly 180 BCF less demand, according to the firm. Whoop! That ain't good.
No, that's almost, we're going to
180 BCF. That's why weather models matter. I complain and I want to punch the computer screen, but I won't, because that's what weather models do. They drive oil or gas demand extremely heavy, and as annoying it is to cover it, we must cover it.
I'm going to have to, as Mr. Producer, purveyor of the show, I'm going to have to get me a curly button every time you want to whoop, 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 whoop. Every time you
we need
do
lightning.
that.
We need like lightning sound effects. Kabang, kabang. Every time we bring up weather. Where's Andy, our producer's got to start dubbing that in. I think the last thing that I think would be interesting to talk about, Stu, and this actually just happened. Well, it happened on Friday late night. They slipped this in. Talk about a late week press release. Okay.
That's an IR guy of the week.
This is it slipped this last week though. 1.5 announces agreement with Houston Texans to purchase carbon removal credits and become the team's preferred carbon removal partner. Sounds intriguing. So
Yeah.
what is that? What does it say? 1.5. Very interesting name, by the way. A subsidiary of Occidental's Low Carbon Ventures. Okay. So it's Oxy. So we'll just start calling it Oxy. Oxy today announced a partnership and agreement and sponsorship with a sponsorship. Gotta love that. There's a sponsorship involved. Gotta be, so you got to throw the logo up on the stadium. Okay? So it's an agreement and a sponsorship. So remember, there's a lot of
let's get it. Yeah, let's get them to sponsor our low carbon podcast.
Exactly. I'll take a
low
sponsorship
carbon podcast. I'm in.
We do need a low carbon podcast. It's exactly what we need. This one emits too much.
That was funny.
Let me start over here. All right, let me start over here. Okay, so the press release says Oxy's Low Carbon Ventures division announced an agreement and a sponsorship with the Houston Texans, whereby the Texans have agreed to purchase carbon dioxide removal credits from Oxy's first direct air capture plant, which is expected to be operational in late 2022. The CO2 removal credits would allow the Texans to offset the estimated carbon emissions for the team's future air travel to regular season away games for 3 seasons. I mean, okay, first off, there's a lot to unpack here. First off, we as we joke, it's a sponsorship. So I can't wait to see the Oxy branded jet flying through the air, as it's burning fossil fuels and emitting. But no, they've got that covered. Second, I mean, the Texans going ESG friendly. I mean, why the Houston Texans of all people, of all the NFL teams, to go and buy carbon removal credits in order to offset their away games? It's the Houston Texans, the capital of oil and gas in America. And that's the NFL team. It's not the New York Giants, not the New York Jets, not the LA Chargers, not the LA Rams. It's not even San Francisco. You're talking about the Houston Texans. That's the second thing that I find crazy. And third, I mean, we've talked about the carbon credit game for a while. And when we talked about the bill in Europe about a couple weeks ago, what was that? That was just shifting the emissions somewhere else. It's all this is, shifting the emissions for a sponsorship so that they can slap on their tail wing, Oxy Carbon Low Ventures. We're doing the world a great thing. This is literally done. They did this for the press release. Literally, this entire credit and CO2 purchase of credits was so they could put out a press release like this, so that on Energy Newsbeat it would show up and we could roast them for it. That's all they did.
Well, I got to give, this is also a shout out to Vicky Holub again, CEO over at Oxy.
Yeah.
She is taking Oxy. We love Oxy. You got to call them and see if they'll sponsor the show. And they're moving over to the carbon capture, and she's going to get into that $4 trillion market. My hat's off to her. So,
she's taking money that was made in oil and gas and shifting it to a whole nother business that has nothing to do with oil. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. No, let's not invest in what actually makes us money. Let's go sell credits to the Houston Texans. Brilliant. You're right.
Oh, I think it's great. I think she is absolutely all over her business.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So
Did you just call me stupid? Yes.
I said absolutely brilliant. You know, you can we'll let the viewers decide for themselves. You got anything else, Stu, before I get myself in trouble?
No, we're gonna have an absolute fantastic week.
It will. So appreciate it, guys. Again, all of the stories courtesy the world's greatest website, energynewsbeat.com. Check it out, dashboard.energynewsbeat.com. Email us questions@energynewsbeat.com. If you need to tell me why I'm wrong about oxycarbon low ventures and why the Houston Texans going ESG friendly is a great thing, email us questions@energynewsbeat.com. It'll also be available via the link in the bio. But for Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. We'll see you guys tomorrow, folks. Stay
Right.
green.
Absolutely.